Hello everybody in the chess world. Today I'm going to show you how to play the Hippopotamus with the black pieces. So what is a Hippopotamus? Well, basically it's a scheme on the double fianchetto, but it's a pretty specific one. Like we're trying to get this with black. All of these moves, this is a scheme for black. So yeah, the double fianchetto, both bishops here, the knights go to d7 and e7, and although this doesn't necessarily happen in every game, I have included a6 and h6, which are kind of typical moves from the scheme. So, well, yeah, initially it's we don't grab any space, we don't even place any piece of ours on the equator, and yeah, this is why it's called the Hippopotamus. We kind of wait underwater to lash out at the right moment, and yeah, try to get the advantage. So, well, talking about general plans, once we get this scheme with black, which usually is not hard because since we're grabbing not so much space, it's hard for white to, prevent black from playing this. So on the one hand, I cannot tell you a lot of plans. This is the spirit of the Hippopotamus. We're playing, we're gonna play according to what white does. But there are a few general things. For example, once in a while, again, once we get this scheme, we can follow it up with a plan like g5, and knight on g6. This is one thing that happens often. And the other one is that, well, a lot of times these knights, kind of passive knights from d7 and e7, remaneuver to the natural initial squares. What I mean is, yeah, of course, they could have gone to b6 and f6 and c6 initially. So, initially we wonder, well, but if one of the plans is to remaneuver the knights there, aren't we like, losing tempos? Well, no, you'll see that quite often by the time one of these knights come to the squares, it's the right moment. It's a moment where strategically this gives us a great advantage. So you'll see this on our first example. Last but not the least, when we play this h6, like around our king, we'll see a lot of times white playing this machinery of bishop on e3 and queen on d2. So this means that we won't be able to castle because we will lose this h6 pawn. So yes, you have to consider that quite often we'll play with the king on the center. This is important. So I'll show you 4 examples. One in which white will grab the center like this, like normally g4 and e4. Then I'll show you an example where they play e4, d4, and c4. Then I'll show you an example more like an Austrian attack, g4, e4, f4, knight on c3. And finally, examples with all the 4 pawns, in our faces. So let us start with the game Vallejo Pons with the white pieces against García Illundain. That's both from Spain. So in this first example, okay, we might start this double fianchetto with g6 first. We might start it with, just e6. I mean, the move order is not so important. I like to usually start it with b6 for a personal preference, but to show it like this on this video for the sake of learning the thing by heart, in an easier way. So in this game, bishop on d3, e6 came, knight on f3, g6, castles, knight on d7. By the way, this was gonna be a miniature. I mean, Illundain is going to win this with black in less than 20 moves. So this is quite funny. Rook e1, g6. We're just going for our scheme, our initial scheme. Bishop on g5. Well, now, of course, we don't want to play bishop on e7 or anything like that. We'll be out of the scheme, so knight on e7. Just protect the queen by blocking the attack like this. Queen on d2. This is one thing that I mentioned before, really normal for white to go with this battery right here. So now we wouldn't make, like the normal, move from the scheme bishop on g7 just to then follow it up with, h6 and a6. They will just go bishop on e6. We have to prevent that. That is why, of course, Illundain here played h6. This is the thing. And after bishop on e3, bishop on g7, and c4, well, you can see it right here. Once again, we're playing with the king in the center. If we were to play castles, we just blunder this pawn. So we could say that from the initial scheme that I showed you, well, you inferred, from that we were going to play, I don't know, a6 right here to finish up that scheme. But no, García Illundain played g5, and This is interesting because, yeah, on the one hand, one of the plans might be knight on g6, but on the other hand, as I just accidentally show with the arrows, well, in a way, white would like to prevent a possible g4, but it's logical that Vallejo did not do this, because if after white plays h3, yes, they prevented g4, but if one day we can arrange the pieces to play that pawn break, will we do it with the contact, and we'll try to open up the position against the king. So the funny thing is, in here, in the game, Vallejo played the most natural move on the whole board, knight on c3. And what can I say? Already a moment to pause the video and think, because black is almost winning right here. So just have to find the way of getting an almost winning advantage for black in here. So pause the video and think. So yeah, García Illundain played g4, attacking this knight. And the thing is, there is no safe place for this knight. I mean, almost all the squares around him are occupied or covered, you know, like here by this pawn. So after knight on h4, this is the thing, and this is why I'm showing you these two knights in green and this, you know, what I said on the intro, like maybe these knights one day will go to their natural square, but with you know, with terrible effect. This was the case. After knight on c6, this is simply a double attack, just threatening the knight with the queen and the pawn on d4, and there's no way to protect both. So already almost a winning position in a miniature from this innocent-looking Hippo position for García Illundain, and well, for a GM this is almost resignable. I mean, Vallejo played g3, what else? You have to protect the knight, but after knight 64 there's not much more to do. But the game did not last too much longer. He played knight on b5. This is logical fighting against the knight, and if we were to take it, well, you know, after recapturing, maybe white will try to use the c-file, have this cool advanced pawn on b5, but I mean, Illundain just played knight c6 back. After Vallejo played bishop on e2, threatening the g-pawn, he just went knight c on e5. And I think now h3 was another mistake. This is what Vallejo played while the plane passes by. And it's funny, after a6 by Illundain, well, actually, Vallejo resigned here. I mean, yeah, regardless of which square this b5 knight will go to, we'll have either g takes on h3 or bishop on f6 will have a terrible effect. So, for example, I don't know, knight d4. I think here we might take this first and then bishop on h6. This looks terrible. Or knight on c3, bishop on f6. I mean, okay, this was a miniature, so black winning on 16 moves. I will say that, you know, in this position, black was already almost winning. So you can see that there was some, black combined a little bit this idea of g4 and the idea of remaneuvering these knights. In this case, okay, helped by white with great effect. And it's a cool thing. So now let us go to a second game, because this is going to be Gata Kamsky against Pausethevideoandthink. And here we're going to see the scheme for white with e4, d4, and c4. So we'll start with the same moves, but after bishop on d3, well, g6 is what Svidler played right in here. And after knight on f3, bishop on g7, castles d6. c4, this is the second thing that I wanted to show you all, this scheme with c4, d4, and e4. And look at this, because Svidler played knight on d7, knight c3, e6, g5 by Gata Kamsky. This is an important move, because here Svidler plays something that is a known reaction to this kind of positions. I mean, Kamsky just played d5, he won some space. He's kind of trying to hit on the light squares around our king. You know, the light square bishop, black's light square bishop is right here. Well, it means it's no longer on this diagonal. Maybe one day we can try to do like this, maybe like this. Yeah, hit on those light squares. But it's funny, the bishop takes on c3 by Svidler. So initially we think, well, we're giving up the best of our two bishops and the pair of bishops. So it looks ridiculous, but you can understand that pretty quickly. Not only we have doubled white's pawns, but now we close it up in the color. You know, we put the pawns opposite to the color of our remaining bishop, and we close up the position on the dark square. So strategically, this makes a lot of sense. Look at how the game continued, because Kamsky did not want to remain passive. He just went knight on e1 just to throw f4 as quickly as possible. Svidler just went for development, f4 queen on e7. After knight on f3, well, now it's so easy to understand that bishop on takes on c3 now more than ever. Just pawn takes, bishop takes, and knight g4. So you can see we don't have the pair of bishops, but we have both knights have a clear square. So I mean, e5 is now ours. This is the main thing. You know, we just grab the e5 square. So you can see there is the d pawn is too far advanced. So there's no control over c5 and e5. These are our squares. This is the destiny for our knights. So we're totally fine playing with the pair of knights. Of course, with the double pawns on B and C, so there is not even a B pawn to one they play on b4 and control it here. It makes a lot of sense. So the game followed knight d4, knight g5, just grabbing that square that we just earned, let's say, and by the way, controlling a possible jump from this knight in here. We're hitting the bishop as well, so bishop on e2 by Kamsky, but yeah, once again, Svidler went for the other safe house for the other knight. By the way, hitting the e4 pawn, queen c2. And another detail, we have not defined where we're going to put our king. So this is something that Svidler is going to take advantage of. You know, he plays f6. Initially mysterious move because, yes, we're overprotecting the e5 square, the e5 knight. But we are weakening this e6 square. It did not seem necessary. But after rook a1, h5. Now I think it's clear that Svidler is going to castle long. Well, once again, the planes seem to be having a lot of fun right here. Or is it a helicopter? I don't know. But yeah, we have Svidler is going to play long castles. So, I mean, it's quite an interesting position. So Kamsky played knight on f3. Svidler went back with this knight over solidifying e5. And yeah, Kamsky danced back, you know, because he's saying, hey, now there is no knight on c5. I want to put my knight on e6. And Svidler said, be my guest. I just play long castles. And after knight on e6, rook d e8. The game followed queen on a4, hitting the a7 pawn. But I mean, I'm not sure about the analysis. I mean, initially, I think this looks like a really bad move for white, right? I mean, I would have played just a4 and a5. Why playing this queen a4 where I'm blocking the pawn that wants to attack and forcing Svidler to play the prophylaxis that he wanted to play anyway? I don't know. I mean, he's Kamsky and I'm nobody, so I'm not going to say anything objectively, but initially, you know, it looks like kind of weird. I don't know if it was a rapid game or not, but okay, rook fd1. Once again, now I will just put my queen back to make this pawn break possible. But yeah, knight on c5, now hitting the queen and the knight on e6, so forcing Kamsky to take it. And yes, after pawn takes, now this d5 pawn might be mobile, so that is why Kamsky went back to rook d e1. But hey, the pawn shield around Svidler's king now is amazing. And the game followed bishop on c8. Yeah, one day this bishop was going to come back to the game. Queen c2, maybe, you know, just anticipating the protection of the e4 pawn, since we have this battery, and maybe going for a4, a5 finally. The game followed h4. This, I mean, okay, I'm going to stop the analysis of this game here. This is an unclear position. I think I rather black. I think the computers were given more or less an equality. Quite an interesting line. So I really like this thing, you know, that sometimes when they play d5, you know, just what Svidler did, just blow up that, e5, and finally, you know, like in this case where white went for f4, we'll just taking it, and then we'll have this safe houses for our knights. Really nice way of playing by Svidler. Okay, these were GM games. Human games. I liked it. Really easy to understand, easy to explain. But now I'm going to go to something that it's going to be much more complicated, because I'm going to go for the computer analysis. And okay, so first of all, I want to go to this position, playing like an Austrian attack for white, just d4, e4, and f4 pawns, this time. And look at this, knight on f3. Yes, so e6. And this, I don't know, it's kind of funny. Initially, I would have expected black to play d6 first, and let us say, I don't know, bishop on d3, and now knight on d7. Why? Well, because mostly in blitz games, maybe white will want to go for an early f5. So it seems illogical to play e6 instead in here, because we're giving contact on that f5 square. But you'll see how this is harmless. So first, I'll show you how, bishop on d3 more than ever developing, and maybe just trying to push this f5 with some more support. I'll show you how this is harmless. First, let us see what will happen in a normal development. Knight on e7, castles, let us say bishop on e3. d6, the typical idea of knight on d7. Here, once again, f5 will be a move that your opponents will probably play on a blitz game. I'll come back to both of those f5 pushes after finishing this little analysis to prove you that you have nothing to be worried about. But let us follow it up with, for example, bishop on f2 with the idea of bishop on h4. This is a logical try. Knight on d7, well, we're always playing like the normal hippopotamus moves. Okay, in this case, we have castled pretty quickly. But okay, there was a pawn on f4, right? There was never a battery of queen on d2 and bishop in here trying to go for g5, so we prevented with h6, nothing like that. So it's logical, sometimes we will play castles early on. Bishop on h4, this is the idea. Once again, the move that comes in the scheme, just a6. And e5. This is a game. This is an old game. White was a computer. It was a Rebel Century. Black was a GM 2500. Grabliaus, what was his name, or Gablio, Giuseppa. But the thing is, it's funny because queen e8, and you can see now that we can play with a little bit of a lack of space. But once again, this is the hypo. We're underwater until the moment where we want to lash out and come out. And meanwhile, I mean, except for the space, it's not like white is really looking menacing. So after rook on e1, knight on f5, I like this move. Another reason to have unpinned, this knight before, of course. I like this move because bishop takes on f5, g takes on f5. So we don't leave, we don't abandon the influence on the center, but our king is quite safe. We don't care about doubling up those pawns and opening, semi-opening that g file. It's fine. a4 was the move by the computer, and again, I like the reaction by this GM. He just took it here, and then f6. Now, again, clearance, a more understandable position for humans. The computer took, and after knight takes, queen e2 hitting the pawn, knight e4 came. Once again, now we have a position that is much easier to understand for us humans, right? Now it looks much clearer now. Yes, I can play this. I like this position. I want to go back to those f5 tries for white. So, okay, we're already here, and in here I show you from this computer game bishop on e3. If they play f5 in here, this you have to know it. For blitz games, because white is going to try this all the time, and of course for a tournament game, why not? Just grab everything twice. When they double up those pawns, already trying to look menacing, like going for some attack on our king, bishop on g5, I guess, is the scariest possible move by white. But I think this move is actually bad, because it's funny. The computer shows how we can sacrifice the exchange and be totally fine here. For a few pawns, bishop takes on f3, queen takes on f3. Yes, they're hitting our rook, but the idea is, yeah, we've blown up the defender of that bishop. And when they take it here, we grab one pawn, we check. Yeah, after king on h1, knight on c6. Hitting the queen, developing the knight, forcing the queen to go to b7, where, well, yeah, now white's queen is out of play. So even in a practical way, this looks really good. And for example, bishop on e5, we're already with the idea of playing queen on h4 and attacking white's king. Let us say rook a1, queen on h4. I think white should probably just give back the exchange immediately. Knight takes, yes, white might play queen takes e7 or queen takes on a7, but this looks already better for black. Another try here, if white doesn't want to give the exchange, will be g3. So after bishop takes on g3, playing this. So yes, white gave one of the pawns, but now they've protected the h2 pawn, and they're going for rook on g1, trying to win the game. Of course, we have a king on h8 in here with the idea of rook on g8, and yeah, this knight might go to d4, you know, to hit this rook, or to e5 to go here. I mean, it's, again, not looking too good for white. These are complex lines because, yeah, you have to have the, you know, the backup of the computer analysis, but it just goes to show that f5 is not a scary move. Even from this same game of the Rebel computer, after bishop on e3 and d6, I said in here, f5 once again, maybe they will like to play f5 here, we'll do the same exact thing. Take twice. Now instead of bishop on g5, bishop takes on f3 and going for the same line, white might try queen on d3. I mean, it's logical, they're trying to be annoying, you know, how are you going to protect that pawn? I mean, if you play, I don't know, queen d7, you know, white is looking like, I'll play like this, I'll have every unit against f5, I'll recover it. Okay, we'll start with rook on e8, just, yeah, preventing queen takes f5 because we're hitting the bishop. Let's say rook a1, we always have this move. I mean, again, this I'm going to show you now, it's a crazy computer analysis. I'll show it to you anyway, just to spare you from having to do it yourselves. After knight on b5, we have this e6. So now everything's looking good for black, but after bishop on g5, well, now they're hitting our queen. Queen on d7, computer was showing me this and this. Queen on f8, I was like, well, but queen on f8, and bishop on e7, and now queen on c8, because the idea is to attract the bishop to e7. So after this line comes, we do exchange queens, and now knight on d7. So if you take the bishop on d3, I'll take the knight on c8. Again, crazy chaotic computer lines. The point is, do not be afraid of early f5s. That's all I'm saying. You know, that was my whole point. But finally, I do want to go for, you know, the possibility of white attacking with all 4 pawns. So c4, b6, and f4. And it's a lot of fun. This, again, will be more like a computer analysis, but it's a lot of fun. So let's start with both fianqueros before playing e6 or d6, right? So knight on c3, e6, knight on f3, d6. And once again, we have... it might look scary, this mass of pawns in our face. But once again, the computer showed me interesting things, because first I was like, all right, once again, the normal scheme for white will be to go with the bishop on d3 and the other bishop on e3. Let us try that. So what to play with black? Well, again, initially normal, you know, hippopotamus moves. But once again, it's not bad to castle early on, you know, before going knight on d7. You know, we won't play h6 in this particular scheme. Maybe we will play a6. Yeah, that's more like it. And in this case, we can just play castles. We're fine. Queen d2, maybe going for an f5 for white, and now, as opposed to the Svidler versus Kamsky game, now it's white, the one who said, okay, I haven't shown where my king is going to go. Maybe I'll play short castles. Maybe I'll play long castles. I don't know. Maybe I'll play h4 and play with the king on f2. It's you know, it's the black pieces who have this lack of information. But f5 by the computer, and this was a really special move for me, because, you know, before checking stuff with the computer, I usually put the board and try to find things for myself. I did not trust the possibility of playing f5, but it's the computer then showed me that it's quite a good move. It's a good reaction. Once again, since we fianqueroed the light square bishop, we're thinking about, well, but isn't e6 too tender? You know, maybe knight g5 will come one day. Maybe they'll play some d5. You know, not right now, but it's kind of looking suspicious. But, well, the computer is so precise. The main move, main line went long castle. So, first of all, good detail is the knight g5 is even a dubious move, because after f takes on e4, well, we were just achieved what we wanted, you know, just exchanging there, and we don't have to be worried about a6 pawn. If they take it, will, it looks wrong. It looks like we're losing an exchange. But after queen on c8, well, I mean, you can see if they take a rook now, we just take there, and the knight, white's knight is trapped. So we'll be much better. I guess knight on h7 will be the move now. I imagine something like that, but it's still, we're much better. This is not possible. So good to know that we don't have to be worried about knight on g5. Short castles, on the other hand, is a possible move. A pretty decent one, probably as good as long castles. And here we have c5. I like this. So this is another way of, another possibility that comes quite often in this Hippopotamus scheme. With the base of the pawns on e6 and d6, sometimes our pawn breaks are f5 and c5. This is kind of weird. Look at this pawn structure. And computer was showing me d5. Yes, white allows us to take on e4 first, but they'll recapture with the bishop so as to keep control of the d5 pawn. And let us say pawn takes, knight takes, will develop here. The e-file is a little crowded, so rook a e1. Well, just queen on d7, with the idea of rook a e8. We're still not out of the woods yet. Probably white did slightly better because we do have this backward pawn in here. However, the activity of our pieces is quite cool. We will follow it up with rook a on e8. It's a decent position, but short castles is good option for white. Instead of that, long castles, it's a much more aggressive one. And this was interesting for me. Again, seeing this with my board and then with the computer, because I was thinking, okay, long castles, and I'm going to want to go for this one day. So, okay, the last line that I'll show you, because this video is getting a little bit long, but this is going to be a lot of fun, because these are all computer moves, computer variations, but this is something that really interesting. So we take on e4, knight takes on e4, bishop takes on e4 is possible. We might react with d5, but after knight takes, look at what the computer showed me, b5, just going Benko-like. And it's a really interesting move, because the other idea is to win the d5 square for our knight to go. I mean, of course, in case of c takes b5. So c takes b5, first we Benko it up with a6. Let us say pawn takes, bishop takes. One of the ideas is, this cool square, of course, at the same time, just opening up lines against white's king. But even knight c3, just to prevent that, this is the move that I proposed to the computer. Well, but what about knight c3, just to block that? The computer wasn't that, just knight on d5. So we can even exchange. Yes, we're threatening rook takes on a2 and king b1. We'll just play knight on c6. Now we want to play knight on b4, and if they prevent it, knight on a5, going for knight c4 mainly, but maybe queen b8, some c5. I mean, look at this. I don't want to fill up the board with arrows, but again, if we think about the initiative, this is looking great for black. So the computer itself, after this great b5, was suggesting to play c5 to pass on that pawn. I don't know, some crazy lines. I'll show you last lines that I show you, because this is all computer analysis. It's kind of fun, because look at this, queen d7. I mean, this is what computers do with. I mean, what will you play here? This is a really complex position. We might think about b4, a6, a5, even some sacrifices, knight on d7. Computer goes queen on d7, which initially I don't understand this move, and I don't think we can play so lightly. I was like asking the computer, what do you think about h4 to and h5? White has hands as well, right? I mean, h4 to h5. And the computer found, justify this queen d7 with a great maneuver against something that I wouldn't have been able to see. Bishop on d5, hitting on a2, and after king on b1, queen on c6, building up this weird battery. Okay, we're hitting the knight, queen c2, now knight on f5, because the queen is not protecting the bishop anymore, so this wins a tempo. And after bishop on f2, knight on a6. The perfect disposition of pieces by the computer. So finally, instead of this knight on b8 going to d7 or something like that, going to a6, always with the initiative. I mean, we just want to play knight on b4, It's a threat because then we'll blow up the bishop on d3 and win the knight on e4. So a3, but now they gave contact. I mean, again, all computer lines, but it looks great this before with attack. So anyway, I'll leave it right here. I don't want to bore you anymore with these things. This is just computer analysis. But it's a pretty interesting scheme, this Hippopotamus. It is quite known, but a lot of times it's people laugh sometimes at this Hippopotamus schemes. A lot of times thinking, well, this is what black uses on blitz games, because you just develop quickly your pieces without even looking at the board. Well, yes, you can even play in long tournament games. I have played this in some rated games with pretty good results. So, well, as usual, I hope you like the video. So I'll leave my cat Citronetta to ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So, well, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for watching.